Hi, Simon. Where are you this week?
I'm actually in Heidelberg at like a European molecular biology training place.
Oh, cool. Is it so a conference?
Yeah, it's a conference which is just a little bit outside of the city center of Heidelberg, and it's in this amazing sort of Bauhaus building, which is loosely based on the structure of DNA. So it's kind of got this sort of spiral staircase, and it's got these bridges which represent the hydrogen bonds, and it's pretty fancy actually.
Cool. Well, you're missing a lot of wet weather in Oxford, I can tell you that much. So,
Yeah.
but by the time this comes out, hopefully, it will all be sunny again. Anyway, this week we're going to talk about the end of humanity, a nice cheering topic.
Absolutely. Right, get us into the festive spirit.
So yeah, extinctions, and in particular, the sort of some of the extinctions of humanity. And our guest is a guy called Henry G, who's written a couple of books. First one about the history of life on Earth, and then he's kind of thought about the how humans go extinct. And fortunately, it's not like tomorrow. He's talking a few thousand years, but we should, I think, quiz him about like the likelihood of it happening a bit faster.
Yeah, absolutely. For
So
sure.
we'll see. Cool. Well, anyway, without any further ado, should we get him on?
Yeah, let's get on.
Well, lovely to have you on Science of the Times, Henry. Would you like to introduce yourself to our listeners just so they have a little bit of an idea who you are and what you do?
Yes, of course. I am a recovering paleontologist, and I've been a an editor at the science magazine Nature for a very long time, where I tend to handle manuscripts on evolutionary biology and other good things.
Indeed, I think you've been very kind to me on occasion, and sometimes I might have cursed you if a paper didn't make it in. But that's such as publication life, isn't it? So
Yes, I'm always kind to people. If
you are indeed,
I,
yeah.
I like to be kind to people.
Yeah.
What nature editors love to do is to accept people's papers, and underneath the cruel, heartless exterior, we really just want to be loved.
Anyway, congratulations on your books. We'll put a link to them. Ideal Christmas presents. It's coming up to Christmas, obviously.
Yes, rectangular gifts are easiest to wrap, and I see you have one too on the similar subject.
I do, and so
So, you know,
three books would be a
buy two.
perfect.
Yes.
Yeah, three books. But yours are called A Very Short History of Life on Earth, and that came out last year. Congratulations, that won the
Oh
Royal.
no, that one came out quite a long time ago.
Okay, it
So
won the Royal Society Book Prize, didn't it?
it did. It came out, honestly, it came out in 2021 and the time has absolutely blown. Yeah, I know. You think it came out just last year. My mum says when things happened the other day, it means any time since the assassination of President Kennedy. So as you get older, you tend to have this sort of strange time compression.
That's right. And then the second book, which did come out very recently, is called The
Yes,
Decline and Fall of the Human Empire.
yes, that did. Yes,
And of course, I should have known it came out a while ago because I did read your first book, I remember it was recorded in the pandemic, I think, and you actually recorded the audio version from your office, playing sound effects to accompany it.
yeah, I did. I had a marvelous time. It allowed me to buy a very expensive synthesizer and declare it as a tax deductible expense because I use the sound effects. Most of the listeners loathe the sound effects. Um, but that is a hill I will die on. I loved doing the sound effects. Although, having said that, the audio book for Decline and Fall, I just did it straight. Having listened to a lot more audio books since then, I realised that people don't generally do sound effects. The producers actually thought it was okay. They just wanted me to scale back on the deep breathing, the heavy breathing dinosaurs. They thought that might be a bit.
So, you cover basically 4 billion years of life on Earth in the first book, which is a huge span. And how much do we really know about those sort of first couple of, 3 billion years, for example? Because a lot was going on, but it was all pretty small.
This is interesting. People ask me how I managed to compress 4.6 billion years into, as they say in the American version, 12 pithy chapters. Well, I always say I leave out the boring bits. And actually, I give you another billion years for free because I talk
You
about
do.
the future of life on Earth. But as you say, the first 9/10 of life, I compress actually into the first 13 pages. And this had all the exciting things that really matter, such as the evolution of life, the evolution of proper eukaryotic nucleated cells from bacteria and their friends, the archaea. If you can hear some heavy breathing off, that's my dogs have coming to see what I'm doing. So ignore them. That's just what
Yeah.
consider it a wildlife documentary. And other things such as the evolution of sex and the evolution of multicellularity, all huge, interesting, fascinating topics. But basically, I went through to the evolution of things that are big enough to see with the naked eye. And carried on from there because that's what most people would do. And there is actually, excuse me, go away.
We can edit these bits out. Don't worry, Henry.
Yeah, they are going away. I fed them already. Now they're celebrating. I've got two golden retrievers. It's like having toddlers with teeth. So I think they have shut the door for me. That's clever. The first 13 pages of A Very Short History of Life on Earth was actually about 9/10 of the Earth's history.
Yeah.
That period covered all the exciting, crucial, important things that evolutionary biologists are really interested in at the moment: the evolution of life, the evolution of sex, the evolution of nucleated cells from bacteria and archaea. All really hot topics at the moment. But as I was just telling a story of the history of life, I wanted to tell it from things that we more or less have a kind of grasp on rather than being too speculative. I wanted to tell a story. And although I made it quite clear that the story only bears a passing resemblance to reality and all the caveats could be found in the notes at the back, you do have to have a story to tell. And so I think for the kind of reader that I was trying to engage for this book, I wanted to start it with things that are at least big enough to see with the naked eye and might be relatable to animals and plants that are seen today in a very broad sense.
So Henry, the sort of, the history of life is something that's, it's fascinated people for, many, many years, and lots has been written about it. It's sort of, in terms of you and the reception of your book, and sort of what do you think is the sort of biggest misconception about the history of life that you've encountered, and how do you go about sort of correcting that?
Most people didn't realize that there was so much in it. People had a very vague idea of which events happened before what. They had a very vague idea of how much time was taken up. I mean, they knew it. It wasn't that they were creationists or anything. It's just that it wasn't something that they'd really thought about. So people hadn't realized that it took such a long time for life to happen, that there was more to prehistory than dinosaurs, that there was a lot of toing and froing in the human lineage before humans evolved. So people felt it was a very good starting point, conversation piece for people who were kind of interested and, on the basis of things they might have heard in the news, but hadn't got a kind of hanger to hang it all on. They hadn't got a scale to put it on. So that's really what I found. People did like the fact that it was short and easily digestible and wasn't a huge, massive tome. And also because I wrote it in as easy a style as I could. I wanted it to be a bedtime story for grown-ups. I even started it Once Upon a Time. And I didn't put in quite deliberately a lot of the caveats. Some people think this, some people think that, some people think the other. This is only a theory.
Yeah.
So I put those all in the notes at the back so people could look at them. I wanted it to be as unobstructed. And I didn't talk about things that people often do in science books. Forgive me, Tim, if you've done this, because oh, this is DNA. It's a long chain molecule. It does this. It does that. It does that, and that is very difficult to do without bringing the whole story to a crashing halt. So I didn't talk about genetic material. I didn't really talk about natural selection or any of the stuff under the hood of evolution. I just told it as a basic story for anyone to read and get some enjoyment out of.
And you succeeded. It was a great read.
Thank you.
If you were to go back at any point in since animals, were the size of something that we can see, the end of the Ediacara and the Cambrian, that sort of period onwards, which geological period do you think you go to?
That's easy. I go to the Triassic period, which was between 250 and 200 million years ago, which is the most unjustly neglected geological period in the Earth's history. People have only vaguely heard of the Triassic period because it was the period in which dinosaurs appeared. Yeah. But they only appeared towards the end of the Triassic, amid a huge profusion of reptiles of all sizes, colours, habits, and shapes, and there was a vast number of different kinds of reptile, flying reptiles, gliding reptiles, marine reptiles, most of which became extinct at the end of the Triassic, some of which were really, really weird. And the thing is, the Triassic happened immediately after the end Permian extinction, in which almost all life was wiped out. So I see the Triassic as a triumphant, defiant raspberry that life blew to the earth to say, you think you can wipe us out? You ain't seen nothing yet. We're going to come up with drepanosaurs. I mean, what the actual? And also many of the animals that we know today, including mammals, frogs, turtles, and of course pterodactyls, they started, and dinosaurs too. They all started in the Triassic period as well. So it's a period that people unjustly neglect. So I'm since I wrote the short history of life on Earth, I've been banging the drum for the Triassic period.
Excellent.
On that note, Henry, of sort of neglect, is there any sort of chapters or organisms that you didn't initially intended to include, but then had to leave out for whatever reason?
I don't know, Syma. It kind of wrote itself. I could have included more, but I think I just included what I wanted to include. It started as a rather different book. It's not like I sat down and I decided to write a history of life on Earth. What happened was one of my colleagues at Nature, a news writer, said, well, each time I finish a book, I say, I'm not going to write another damn book. I've had it. I'm not going to write a book. And my wife always says, yeah, of course, that's nice, dear. Yeah, of course you aren't. But my friend David Adam, a news writer, said, Henry, he said, which was a good start because that's my name. He said, Henry, why don't you write a book about all the fossils you've had the privilege of bringing to publication in Nature? People send the papers and we publish them. And I thought, that's a good idea. So still swearing that I wasn't going to write a book, I wrote a book called Let's Talk About Rex, a personal history of life on Earth. So that included some of the fossils and quite a lot of anecdotes. But my parents, who are my most sternest beta readers, they're both nearly 90 and they don't put up with fools gladly. They said, it's all very nice, Henry, but who is, apart from who the people who are mentioned, are going to read this? My agent was a bit more tactful, and she said something to me that my very first editor for my very first trade book, Deep Time, 25 years ago, he just said, tell the story.
Yeah, okay.
Well, this is it. It's the most fantastic story. So I decided to take out all the anecdotes and just tell the story. So it was kind of winnowed out from a different kind of text, and I put some things in that I hadn't had much to do in the original text, such as the evolution of mammals. It gave me an idea. It gave me an excuse to talk about particular issues that really fascinate me, like the mammalian middle ear and how dinosaurs got so big because they're air cooled, and the evolution of the backbone, and how in humans it's turned from a horizontal beam to a vertical beam, and how that causes all sorts of problems. It allowed me to focus on those particular topics in the context of the whole history. Of course, it gets more and more granular as it gets on. It starts throwing around millions and billions of years, but it ends with humans, and it ends with the first human putting a handprint on the wall to saying, I'm here. That was the end of prehistory. And then I go on in a science fictional way to talk about what might happen in the future, which is more and more tendency towards superorganismal organization, which seems to be quite successful. I mean, Ed Wilson, in his book The Social Conquest of Earth, says that the most successful organisms are humans and social insects because they're superorganisms. They're very complex societies. I think he's got a point, at least in terms of as a riff to hang a story on. So I'm sorry, Syma, it's a very long answer to your question. Basically, once I decided on the format, it wrote itself. It was the easiest book I've ever written. It just happened.
You were like a sort of a Kerouac of history writing.
Well, I don't know about that, but I certainly enjoyed myself hugely.
But most of apart from humans, obviously, most of the species, if not all of them, in the first book are extinct. And then that must have got you thinking a little bit about our future, the future of humanity. And in fact, you do touch upon it in the first book, but you don't pin your colours to the mast of how much longer we'll be around. And you get a little bit closer to answering that in the second book, don't you? And that's all about extinction. So all species go extinct, right? That's the fate. And 99.9% or more of species that have ever lived are no longer here. Mm. We're a relatively young species, you argue, and the signs are that we're not going to be around forever. Is that right?
Well, I hit a bit of a clangor in the first book when I went on to the last chapter, The Past of the Future, where I was trying to talk about the post-human world. And, of course, I had to consider what would happen to people. And I thought, when will people become extinct? 1,000 years, 2,000 years, 1,000,000 years, however long. In the end, I opted for sooner or later. But then I felt I really should have gone into this. So I went into it a bit more, and I thought, jeepers, the signs aren't very good. Then I wrote an essay for Scientific American called Humans Will Soon Go Extinct or something. And I sent it to my friend Kate Wong, who is an editor there, and she very kindly published it. I mean, Kate and I have had many adventures together. I remember after a conference in Calgary, we shot up to the Tyrrell Museum of Vertebrate Paleontology, which is in the middle of the Badlands of Alberta. And then we had lunch in a Greek taverna, kind of stuck in the middle of nowhere with columns and vine leaves in the Badlands. Very surreal. Best Greek meal I've ever had. Anyway, Kate published this essay on the extinction of humans, and it caused consternation in many different languages. You'd see these essays in Czech with skulls and deserts all over them. Nature editor says humans are going to be extinct tomorrow, that sort of thing. So I thought what I should do is expand this into a book. So in the spring and summer of 2023, when I happened to be going through an acute episode of anxiety and depression. I was changing from one antidepressant to another antidepressant, and I had these incredible, constant physical anxiety. And I don't know, it may come out in the book. The only way I could get round it was by working furiously hard for nature. And when I wasn't looking at papers, working furiously hard on my book, writing. It's what I do to calm down. So this book, once I'd kind of had the idea of the book, it just went whoomp onto the page very, very quickly. And I hadn't done the bit. I ended the bit on. I did a bit about space exploration at the end. I wasn't originally going to do that, but my agent said, "This is a very depressing book. Why don't you have a Hollywood ending?" So I thought I'd put a Hollywood ending on it. I probably did it a bit quick. I'm thinking about it now. I'd have written it slightly differently, but I had to fill a hole with that book. I mean, having talked about human extinction and made people all terribly worried, I thought people were going to say to me, show me the money. I mean, so I had to do a lot of reading and a lot of research, a lot more than I did for the article, and got a huge file of obscure preprints on everything from photosynthesis to world economic situations to the crisis in human sperm count. I mean, it was a very eclectic range of things I had to read, rather beyond my usual comfort zone. But that was an education. I mean, that's why I'm an editor at Nature after all these years. I love science and I love finding out new things that I didn't know about, and that gets me excited. That's what keeps me getting up in the morning.
So Henry, I'm going to put you on the spot now then, and now that you've said that, I'm going to say, show me the money. So how long have we got?
Well, in the book, I say 10,000 years, but actually there's a distinction to be made between actual extinction, which is when the last person turns off the lights, and functional extinction, when, there is a small population, but whichever way you look at it, it's going to go down. There is no way it's going to go up again. I think functional extinction might happen within a few thousand years, actually. And then we'll get down to such a population which is so small and so divided that stochastic processes come into play, and you can't really know which particular prosaic event will wipe out one population or another. I mean, I was thinking about meta-population dynamics here, all the sort of things that Ilka Hansky and colleagues have done with butterflies in Finland and their populations and so on. So I don't think we've got very long at all. I think there are all sorts of reasons for this, to do with climate change and the world economy and overexploitation of resources.
I mean, it's interesting as you talk about, genetics and the fact we don't have very much genetic diversity. You look at other species that have gone extinct, so, quite young species, and you talk about that. You talk about, if we have any chance of surviving really long term, as you say, towards the end of the book, we've got to get into space. Mm-hmm. But did you talk about artificial and general intelligence taking over the world? You didn't touch on that one, did you?
There were a lot of things I didn't talk about, and I quite deliberately didn't talk about them. I didn't talk about being hit by an asteroid or volcanic eruptions or things that we can't really control. AI, I didn't talk about. Now, I have read an absolutely terrifying book recently by a chap whose name I can't remember. It's on my blog somewhere, called If Anyone Builds It, Everyone Will Die, saying that AI will kill us all.
We've had some more positive people about AI on the podcast.
I think this person has this particular chap has, I now discover in the past, said 20 years ago, nanotechnology, we're all going to turn into grey goo. However, the boy who cried wolf was eventually right. The things like AI are a worry. Neither did I consider zombie apocalypse or any other science fictional things like that, because I felt there were too many things we know about that are inherent in human biology that tell us a great deal about human extinction. Also, one of the reasons I wanted to write the book was an antidote to writers who are from a physical sciences background, like Michio Kaku, who tend to have a kind of very techno-utopian view, also more philosophical, like Yuval Noah Harari, who tends to think in this more progressivist way. My view is once things go up, they can also come down. And the trend, the actual data that there are, show that we will decline very quickly. After 2100.
Yeah, yeah, no, exactly.
Well, that's cheered me up no end.
Well, it won't happen. It won't happen before Christmas. Don't worry.
Yeah. I mean, we've got to get to 2100, Simon. You know, that's
The people ask me, and you could ask me this, but it's a question people ask me: how do I manage to sleep at night? You know, when I talk about. This is after the very short history of life on Earth, where I talk about the terrifying amount of time that one deals with, billions of years. How do I actually get up in the morning and put one foot in front of the other and eat my Weetabix and manage to function? And this has happened certainly after the decline and fall of the human empire. How do I manage to keep going? And I say I've cultivated a kind of philosophic repose in which all you can do is the best you can and do your best for your fellow human being, all very touchy-feely, and leave the planet in a way you'd expect you'd want to find it. So
I completely agree with that, because, you know, having also thought about, you know, these vast time spans and knowing that, you know, the sun will eventually die, that, you know, CO2 levels will drop so low, photosynthesis will stop, all of that stuff, having kind of thought about that. People ask me very similar questions, and the answer for me is, well, all that really matters is my children and perhaps my grandchildren, and that's what evolution has honed us to worry about. So I'm not going to worry about the long term, but exactly as you say, let's try and leave something. Let's try and leave the planet in as good a state as we can. Well, thank you for taking time out of your day to talk to us, and congratulations on the books that we've discussed. They're great, and they're called A Very Short History of Life on Earth and the Decline and Fall of the Human Empire. And you can get them in any good bookshop. Ideally go to your local independent bookshop, but if you can't, you can also get them on Amazon, I'm sure.
Can I tell you very quickly as a postscript? I have this one coming out in February.
And that's a children's book, isn't it? I read about this.
Yeah, yes. It's a children's book. There's
cyanobacteria. There we go.
Unfortunately, it's not out before Christmas. But one of the most common criticism I had for A Very Short History of Life on Earth was it wasn't illustrated. So you have asked, I have provided, but it doesn't come out till February. So that can be next Christmas.
That can be next Christmas. Well, thank you for your time. Congratulations on two excellent books. I encourage our listeners to buy them, and thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Tim. Thank you, Syma. Talk to you soon.
Well, Simon, we're all going to die.
But not for a good while.
Yeah, we should make it to Christmas by the sound of it.
Yeah, no, I mean, that's really fascinating, because it really got me sort of thinking about wanting to read the book and seeing what are the signs, right, of our demise.
No, he does. He looks at kind of other species that have gone extinct, and you know, he looks at kind of the rise of, and so species often, obviously they start quite rare when they've evolved, they often increase in numbers and they'll sort of reach a plateau, and then you sort of start to see these decline in population sizes until, you know, kaboom.
Yes.
So that's kind of what he's getting at there. And we're a relatively young species. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of interesting. Homo sapiens, people say about, 250,000 years we've been around, but human biologists or, hominin biologists, they're real splitters. So if it was anything other than a human, so they'll basically find a tooth and say, oh, look, it's a tiny little bit different from our teeth. That must be another species. But if it was like anything else, like a plant or an insect, they'd just dump them in the same species. So some people say we're all Homo erectus, right? Which means we'd have evolved about 2 million years ago. So, yeah.
Okay, interesting.
No, it is interesting.
And it's fascinating to think, I guess we think of ourselves as sort of like the pinnacle of evolution, and we're the bee's knees, and we go, what takes our place?
Who knows, right? I mean, maybe octopus will take over the world.
Yeah, who knows?
I wrote an article about that once.
Excellent. I should look it up. Of course you did, Tim.
Cool. Well, I better let you get because given you're at a conference and we're recording this late afternoon, I would imagine there's some
Oh my God,
canapé and drink event that you should be going to look at
Well, there's going to
posters.
be a live band tonight. So let's see.
Isn't it? Isn't it? Excellent. Well, I hope you enjoy it. Enjoy the
Yes.
music, and
Thanks, Tim.
I
See
will
you next week.
see you soon. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye,
Bye.
Syma.